when you guys started playing that song and singing that song every Sunday, I just, this is my jam. That was my favorite song, and
It's been
I got
cancelled.
Cancel.
blamed. I got
Cancelled.
canceled. I was
Uh,
like, oh no,
Oh no.
God, I love that.
Welcome to Worship in Waves, where we are all sinners. No one is righteous, not even one. Therefore, we are all cancelled. Today's topic, we're going to talk about cancel culture. And should Christians join in or participate in cancel culture? Or what do we do if we Christians are victims of cancel culture because of our beliefs? So I'm with my friends Iking and Lori.
hey,
So first off, let's try to define cancel culture. Cancel culture is the popular practice of withdrawing support for public figures and companies after they have done or said something considered objectionable or offensive. Cancel culture is generally discussed as being performed on social media in the form of group shaming. This involves calling out the person and their bad behavior, boycotting their work, and taking away their public platform and power. How have you encountered um, that term or that kind of practice recently?
I think Rory should take this.
Okay, actually, I really have, I really didn't know what cancel culture meant till like a few days ago. I used to game a bit before, and I was able to see some of our what trending topic right now. Some casters, some gaming personalities were being removed for comments that they said, not just being removed from their platforms, but for them being removed from their jobs completely. People that have spent 18 years in the industry, and just because someone showed some evidence of sexual harassment or in a way due to messaging, not really physical, or someone speaking out against them about a certain thing that happened, 18 years of being in the industry as being a well respected person all went out the window, and their families are being harassed, and the children are being harassed also. So they had to leave the industry, they had to leave their jobs just to dodge all of that. And I was really curious, what is going on? And when I did do a little bit of research, I read the word cancel culture, and I was thinking, wow, I've never heard of this word before. I didn't know this is how damaging it can be for an established person in his profession. Like you said, it could affect not just in gaming but other people. It can take away your whole career. It can take away your whole livelihood. And these people have just been silenced. They've been pushed to the back. And knowing that these people have been in the industry for as long as they have, it kind of it kind of struck me oddly because it was somewhat of a chain reaction. I mean, one person got called out, and after that first person got called out, people started coming forward, and I couldn't believe that people coming forward all of a sudden with new information. As if it kind of baffles me how this just happened, and how so many personalities and how so many people in a span of I think 1 week that have been devoting their lives to a particular platform have been just removed. So this is the first time I've actually heard about cancel culture. I'm not really familiar with other happenings in other industries, but yeah, I think it's my first time.
We're not gonna name the names of those that the situation of the people involved in what you said, but based on that, what do you think cancel culture is inherently good or bad?
Well, from what I've seen, it's kind of tough to think about it because you as a viewer, a person that watches these people, do entertainment, they could be actors, they could be gamers, they could be whatever. Seeing them all of a sudden get removed, you're kind of biased, right? I mean, just as a normal person, you're kind of biased seeing these people just get removed from their profession. You've been so used to these people being who they are, being the personalities that they are, and you kind of feel sorry for them, right? And then you kind of think, oh, this cancel culture must be such a bad thing. And then you have another side of a coin of what they actually did. And some of this stuff isn't okay. Most of the time, I don't like to say this, but most of the time, women play the sexist card. You know what I mean? But if it gets pretty serious, like physical, like I actually, in the last few instances I was reading, there was like physical contact with what these guys were doing, why they were being, you know, targeted and everything like that. And in no way, shape, or form is that acceptable. The strangest thing for me is they've been done like, they come out like it's something that happened 5 years ago or 8 years ago. And then I get conflicted. Is that enough? Like the person's changed from that time, right? I mean, the person must have at least changed from like 8 years ago since this actually happened. But people, when they read these stories that these people come out with, they go onto YouTube or whatever, they start crying or whatever. People start to sympathize with them, and the career that you made, even if you didn't continue to be that person that the thing that you did, it gets completely axed. So I'm really conflicted about that, whether it's good or bad. In a way, I think it's good because you get to remove a person that could be a possible either a predator or person that could be a not really a bad person, but someone that creates an unhealthy community or a person that could create more problems for a specific community. But on the flip side, I also feel like you ask someone for something very small, and he could be a changed person now. I mean, like 8 years is a long time ago, and then another person comes out and said it was just 5 years ago, and then he pressured me to do this and to do that. And I'm kind of conflicted. This person had time to actually change, but you can't actually erase his past. I believe as a Christian that we we do forgive. We don't forget, but I definitely forgive people for the things they've done. But if we say we forget what they did, of course not. You keep that in mind regarding another person. So I'm kind of conflicted with that. I think I'll pass this to my brother.
So I agree with Rory, but I also think that everything should be put into context. So cancel culture can be good if the personality and the event is very fresh. Let's say a teacher is found molesting a student right there and then. Then to cancel that teacher's role or job in that institution would be the safest thing to do so that the teacher could get help and could return to society rehabilitized rehab with and after going rehabilitation. But also on the flip side, when something has been dug up or it has like a long time, as Rory has mentioned, has passed, then I think we should pause and look at the person before we decide to quote unquote cancel them.
Personally, I believe that cancel culture started out good because the intentions of people were to catch evil men and call out their bad behavior and um, condemn them, condemn them for what they did, for what they've done. But it's nowadays it's kind of snowballed and it's become a weapon by the people, especially with internet and social media. It's become um, it's become a weapon for people to use just so they can feel that kind of power. I've been reading some articles about it, and I've noticed or I come to some of my own conclusions that why something like this was snowballed from something with good intentions. Because when you call someone out for their bad behavior, using the power of social media and using the power of like the mob mentality. Like there's a slight sudden increase of social status for you since you feel that you have a little bit more power than you normally have because you're able to call someone out and something happens and they get attention for what they're doing or what they've done, and it feels empowering for some people. And when something like when other people call out that person as well, and then their popularity or their platform comes down, so it makes you feel a little empowered that you could have done something like that with just like liking something, sharing a post, or ranting on Facebook, whatever. So it something with good intentions. It kind of was turned into a weapon that people would just. Some people dig up anything they can just so they can feel that kind of like power. Like I've been researching a couple of like with the examples that you gave when it comes to like sexual harassment and pedophilia. Of course, that those are really wrong. Anyone who does them should be condemned. But because of the power that cancel culture that gives people, um, people are trying to cancel anyone that they kind they're indifferent or people they don't like. Like I've read Justin Bieber was also canceled for a while back for stating his beliefs in God. Uh, Camilla Cabello, the singer, people dug up some old tweets, I think, of hers that had racial slurs, and she was canceled for a bit because of that. Recently, comedians Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel, uh, an old comedy skits, they were portraying like blackface. They were painting their faces black. They were portraying black people, and right now in that kind of landscape in the landscape in America, like that's kind of like a no right now, and people somehow dug that up and exposed that part of their career, which happened like more over a decade ago, and they're being canceled for that. Uh, I think 2 years ago or 1 year ago, another actor and comedian, Kevin Hart. You guys know him. He was set to host the Oscars. I remember he was set to host the Oscars, and then someone dug up some dirt about him with homophobic tweets. And because of the backlash, he was forced, or he wasn't forced, but because of the pressure, he just had to step down from hosting the Oscars. And that's kind of like a big deal for a lot of people. That he had to just turn it down because what if he did proceed and host the Oscars? It would be like a massacre. And even our very own Manny Pacquiao, he lost a lot of endorsements from brands like Nike after he said he opposed gay marriage um, in an interview, and then almost suddenly, like on the next day, Nike cut their ties with him. So for things like that, they're not, they're nowhere near um, pedophilia or sexual harassment. But people are using cancel culture and the power that it gives them to cancel people for doing some maybe questionable things or having questionable beliefs according to their standards, their personal standards. But I don't think that in those situations cancel culture is even like needed. Like it's being abused. So
I think this cancel culture thing isn't going to end so soon because of the reasons that you stated, that it really does empower those who really call out, and it makes them feel that they are quote unquote helping. But we should also remember a very important word. It's context. Like what they said, what they're being cancelled for, most of those people are things that have been dug up, like how many years ago? 8 years, 10 years, 12 years. And we must remember that in that time, in that context, what they said did not rock the boat because it was the norm at that time. But it is no longer the norm at this time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem with the youth today, that they think the norm today was the norm way, way back then. And they should realize that that's not the case. Like, what we think is normal now was not normal way, 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 way back then. And that context is really important when we uh, look at something. Like, what was the norm at that time? What is the norm now? Is there a gap? And I think, like, in the heart of it, I think cancel culture is not really something that we should involve ourselves in, because at the heart of it, cancel culture is not providing a chance of redemption or restoration. Just the word by itself, cancel culture. So you are totally canceling this person in various aspects, if you think about it. Because cancel culture does not only affect your career, it affects your relationships, it affects your loved ones. Because I think Rory and I actually had a discussion, and many of these people who are cancel cultured, even their loved ones were being harassed, their children, their wives, their husbands. And it doesn't just affect one person, it affects a group of people. And personally, I think that as Christians, we shouldn't really participate in cancel culture, because the Lord Jesus Christ was not about cancel culture. I would like to read something really quick from John 8:11, and this is the story of uh, the adulterer that was found, adulteress rather, the woman caught in adultery. And uh, John 8:11 says, "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Now go now and leave your life of sin." So Jesus didn't call out this adulteress that, yes, you are an adulteress, your sin will consume you. No, he said, yes, you are a sinner. Yes, you have sinned. But now is opportunity. Now is the time to escape from that sin. Now is the time to become a better person for the glory of God. Go now and leave your life of sin. So Jesus Christ is actually pushing for restoration, is actually pushing for transformation. I think that that's the sad part about this cancel culture, as you've mentioned, that the heart of it is a good idea. Yes, let's remove this person because then the victim or future victims might not be safe with him or her around. But we also forget what the end should be: rehabilitation, restoration. But people just are so focused on canceling this person and shaming them that they forget that the person that they're doing it to is also just a person, also has their own failings, also has their own weaknesses. And I think that as a generation, we need to see the whole entire picture. Yes, we could cancel someone for something they've done that is gross and negligent. But then what? After that, then what? Then we must take steps to rehabilitate, restore that person so that they can become a functioning member of society. So I think that cancel culture misses so many marks that I think it would be safer that if we do not participate in it.
Well, I remember that point that Josh was bringing up about Kevin Hart, and I remember about, yeah, I actually heard about that. And I heard about all the pressure. At first, he didn't really want to, you know, retract what he said before. He was actually resisting no matter. Actually, as you know, like most comedians, they have a team around you, right? You have a team, and your team's the one that helps you know do your shows, you set this up, and set up that. His team was telling him that he should, apologize. He should retract. He should, ask forgiveness, whatever. And like for the first few times that they asked, he completely rejected. He didn't want to go back. But the pressure was just so much. There was so much pressure on him. It could have been, career ending. So he was forced to, apologize. And I can understand that's what cancel culture is trying for business. And if you think about like stuff like that, I can think that it can be used in a good way. But the problem is like times like this, with people like this, I don't think it can be completely what you call this. I don't think it can be completely something safe to use right now. Because anybody can be targeted and they can use anything to target certain people. And as Christians, I don't think that's something that we should be like what my brother said we should be involved with. I mean, back then people could like take a joke, right? I mean, you see comedians back then they could take, they do racial slurs like Don Rickles or whatever. They would like, Jewish, African American, Puerto Rican, and people were laughing. You try any of that right now with all of these like snowflakes that we have around in society, people will eat you alive. Your career won't last. And people will just say, "Why do you have to talk about this and that?" And then you have to be, and that's why a lot of surviving comedians right now have to be very smart with the words they say. They can't. It has to be yes, they have to go through the jokes if it's going to be too much, if it's going to be something that could ruin their career. I think there was, the guy from Seinfeld, Kramer. I think he did some racial slurs when someone in the crowd was heckling him. I think it was an African American person heckling him. That ruined his career almost instantly. That canceled his career immediately. So it has its uses, and like my brother said, if it's done in context, cancel culture the way that you can cancel someone's career, you can remove a person from becoming a threat to a community, to becoming a threat. If you take it into the proper context, it can be very, very useful. Especially these people that have, uh, you know, got so much fame thinking that they're untouchable. It can be kind of a good weapon to remove them from the popularity or whatever they're trying to push through with and stop them from doing any further damage down their career. It can also be a bad thing. I mean, like you said, there are people that stood for their faith, and not everybody accepts that. And as Christians, we always have to speak about our faith. I mean, it's not like anybody's going to cancel us right now, right? We're not that popular. I mean, if all three of us were, imagine if this whole thing, like if all three of us were super famous, I don't think we'd have another, you know, podcast happening again if we just went out and said something that would be, what do you call this, controversial. And as Christians, I believe we should be speaking up. Like I said, it's our duty, right, to speak about our faith. And when you're a famous person and then you do that, these people can paint a big target on your back. And there are a lot of people out there with different ideas, with different faith, and with different thoughts on whatever. And when you're there trying to share the word of the Lord or state that you don't believe this is that and this should be done as that as Christian, it becomes very difficult for you to use your popularity or use you as a Christian as a platform to spread the word of God. And that's one of the things that I don't really agree on. I think that it can become something. It can be toxic in a way. I think a lot of people have used this a toxic weapon to deal with other people that they just don't like or they have qualms with. So, as my brother stated, I don't think we, as Christians, we should get involved with cancel culture.
And in response to that, as Christians, even if we get targeted by this cancel culture, should it matter? Should we care? And I think we shouldn't care because think about it. If we are true to the Word of God, if you are really following His will, then there will always be someone to oppose you, and it's just an inevitable thing. Jesus Christ Himself was opposed, and He was already He was the Son of God, veiled in flesh, and He Himself could not escape being ridiculed or being opposed.
He was
So
cancelled.
he was actually tried. He tried. They tried to cancel him, but they couldn't do anything
Yeah,
because
they tried.
his his agenda was on a higher plane. His agenda was restoration, love, forgiveness, grace, mercy with justice. So he didn't care. Because if you think about it, if Jesus Christ cared so much about this cancel culture, he wouldn't be able to do his ministry. He would always be defending himself left and right. And what time would there be to do what he needed to do? So as Christians, I think that as long as we are faithful to the calling that God has given us, as long as we are faithful to the word that He has given us in the Bible, we shouldn't care about cancel culture. It is something that will come. Has something that has come to many Christian celebrities, but we must also remember that it doesn't matter. We don't matter. What matters is the message that we bring and the God who we serve.
Yeah, really good points there. I wish you didn't say that. You see your ending piece right away, King, because I was going to introduce a couple incidences. So I just wanna mention this and squeeze this in before we can bring this to a close. So I mentioned about like some other celebrities who were like canceled because of their beliefs. Um, I'm also going to read about some people who are not celebrities, but they were canceled for not speaking out about their beliefs, but for something like for just sticking to their beliefs. So let's see. One, you know about the Mozilla browser, like Mozilla Firefox. One of the co-founders of the Mozilla company, um, Brendan Ike. He was forced to step down from the company because of his beliefs against gay marriage laws. And a couple, Aaron and Melissa Klein, the owner of a sweet cake shop, I think you may have heard of this story. They
I
refused to
think we have.
create, yeah, they refused to create a wedding cake for an LGBT couple. So the legal battles lasted for like years, and they ended up having to pay $135,000 to the gay couple, and they didn't give up. They kept on fighting. Another couple, Daniel and Amy MacArthur, owner of Asher's Baking Company, in the same situation, refused to create a wedding cake to LGBT couple, and went on to have like a 4 year legal battle that went on and off. And the last I checked, when I was doing when I was reading about this, in 2019 they were still submitting their case again for like another round. They lost because that's what happens to people who uphold their Christian beliefs. The world overcomes us with their worldliness, but they fought. They submitted their case again to court for another round, and both couples, though, even though they're still fighting, they claim that this has made their faith even stronger. So yeah, and with the topic of should Christians like us be involved in cancel culture, I believe that even though it has some good intentions, I don't think Christians should ever be involved in anything like cancel culture, because it is taking away, or it is a statement that we are not giving, or we are not confident that God will be absolutely just when the end times come. So anything that we do, especially something trivial as cancel culture, is like taking justice into our own hands and not leaving it up to God. So if Christians believe in the sovereignty of the Lord, and that if we believe He is absolutely just, so we should also believe that anyone who's doing bad things, extremely bad things, will end up having to stand on trial in front of God. So that's what I think. How about you guys? So that we can close this.
So I think that it's important to know that yes, God is the God of justice and mercy, and it is really in the hands of the Lord. But there is really something that we have to do as His agents here on earth. Uh, there are many times where we see injustice happening right before our eyes, and there is something that we can do about it. But we just like some Christians are so tempted to just sit at the back or sit down and fold their hands and say, "Oh, the Lord will take care of it." Like if the Lord really wanted it not to happen, then He would have used something or someone to stop it. And then we should like, then we forget that what if we were there for a purpose? What if the agent that God wanted to use to stop that injustice was us in the first place? So I believe that we should do something about it because God ministers to people through people. We are a community of believers. We are a body of Christ. And I think that action is really important. I'm not saying that we should take it into our own hands and become like that anonymous guy wearing Guy Fox masks and and or become like the Sons of Batman kind of thing that Rory mentioned to me like a while ago, where we we take justice into our own hands. But I think that there we should really be mindful of what is happening. We should check the context and we should take action because God has given us an opportunity and a responsibility to to not only take care of ourselves but to also take care of the body of believers God has placed us in. So I do believe that we need to act, and I do believe that uh, justice is something that is upheld. And as sons and daughters of God, we must also uphold that justice, no matter how frail or difficult it is. What do you think, Rory?
I agree with my brother on that point. Yeah, I agree with Josh as he said. Justice will be in the hands of God, and we really don't have to worry. People will stand before the Lord when their end comes, and they'll be judged according to what they did. And I also agree with my brother that we can do something. We don't have to just stay quiet, or we don't have to just let it slide. But I also understand that we don't have to 86 someone's career, to put a point. I know, like for example, there are a lot of controversial things that happen with like a lot of places, a lot of preachers, a lot of churches, and even some music scenes, right? There's some uh, iffy things that they do. It's not like we're gonna go out there riot and say we should have them canceled or whatever, and try to get this church removed or whatever. That's not what Christians do. But what I do believe is what some people do is, for example, someone puts out a song or so, or somebody puts out an album or something. Sometimes some churches, like for example, we have music that we listen to in a church, right? Instead of canceling a person, instead of saying that some people say is go out there and try to get these people removed like publicly. You can choose not to list put their songs in your lineup, or you can do something else about that, right? I'm pretty sure there are other churches that do that out there. And I'm not blaming people, like, oh no, the person has no connection with his song, and and the things they do, they wrote it and whatever. I think that's choice. The point I'm trying to make is I'm not putting that like something that everybody should do. But I'm making a point that there are other things that we can do, uh, other than trying to destroy someone else's career, destroy someone else's uh, life to make it harder for their family. I don't think that's the path that us Christians should take. But we can find other ways where instead of being something, it can be something more of uh, a rehabilitation time for them, instead of something more of a time for them to mourn. And most people think that when they destroy someone else's career, these people will, they'll stop, they'll feel sad about all of this, it'll end when their career is over. But as Christians, I don't think that's something that we should be doing. I think that, we can find different ways, we can find different uh, things to do about cancel and cancel culture, about people who present a toxic platform to our community.
And thinking about that, like with what Rory said, and what Josh said, especially with those two couples and the baking company or baking place. Like, why don't you just find a place where they do bake LGBT wedding cakes? Why force yourself to get a cake in a place that they don't? Like, they don't want to bake your cake, go to another bakery that does bake cake. They're not the only bakery in the city, I think.
I think that's a curious thing. I mean, maybe they researched beforehand about the bake shop. That's been
Yeah,
weighing on my head too.
specifically
I was
targeted
actually
that
like,
bake shop.
you're trying to,
Yeah.
trying to bring some pain down on the big shop. They knew they were like,
Actually, there's a
crazy.
term for this, Rory,
Or
and
what's
I
that?
found the term is called clout chasing. So the definition of clout chasing is when someone starts unnecessary drama about a person for no reason whatsoever to gain attention and start beef with or to make a little situation everyone's business when it has nothing to do with them. So that's what it is. You're making up drama just to draw attention or to get game and get gain and fame and to get your 5 minutes of fame. So stop. You don't need to.
What you guys said earlier, you're actually making me change my position a little bit, but I still uphold to what I said. I don't think we should be involved in canceling single people when it comes on destroying their lives and careers and damaging anyone that's in their lives as well, like their families and their friends. But I think we should the kind of cancel culture that I can probably support is when it's involving non-biblical beliefs. That's something that you can get behind. Like if it's like if they're trying to legalize abortion here in the country, that's something that we can try to cancel. Imagine, I think you mentioned Guy Fawkes. Imagine if like all us Christians, instead of like the Guy Fawkes mask, we had this guy's mask. Yeah, this guy, and
that's not even Jesus's real face. Come on. I think we've discussed this before. That's
yeah. Imagine if we marched down to our governments and city halls in that mask. And how
but
about the craziness of cancel culture? Like, if like, would we be immune to that? Like, I'm not sure if I had really a really clean past. Though. If someone wanted to dig up, they can probably dig up some stupid things that I said.
Actually, I I kind of agree with you. I don't think anybody's safe from something like that. Even I find like it needs to get to the point where you're either famous and then it can really hurt you, or it's controversial enough that even if you aren't famous, it's still going to hurt you. I mean, nobody's clean, right? Me, my brother, anybody. There's something stupid you must have done when you were younger and when you weren't thinking, and when you weren't, you know, you didn't see 5, 10 years from now that exact thing that was supposed to, just be something dumb because you're just some young dumb kid back then. It's gonna bite you in, the butt when you when you do start to do something with your life down the road. So yeah, I do agree with that.
I think that's the beauty of it all because um, that's what Jesus is all about. He's not looking for the perfect disciple. He's not looking for the perfect person to become his follower. He's looking for people who are struggling in their lives with sin, who are willing to be transformed by his grace, by his word. And that's what Christians are. We are there for the transformation. We are willing participants in the transformation that God offers us. And no, we were never gonna be immune from cancel culture. But as I said, should we care? Does it matter? I think we should need to adopt that strong mentality that yes, I have a dark, shady past, but that's what that's why I need Jesus and that's why I have him in my life. And if you can't accept me for for me, the me now that has grown out from the me that was me back then that's your problem and not mine.
I have a question on that. Uh, I mean, as Christians, have we had I'm very curious. I mean, it's not like if we had a world that was 100% Christian, cancel culture wouldn't exist, would it? I mean, have we like that Christian on Christian cancel culture? I'm kind of curious about that. I don't think I've. Forgive me for my lack of knowledge, but I'm new to this topic, so I find that kind of interesting.
Maybe it's I'm not sure, but reformers versus the televangelists and reformers versus the word of faith guys and the prosperity preachers. That's I think the closest Christian versus Christian kind of cancel culture that I can think of.
But did they get canceled though? That's my question. They get like I know people can debate, right? You can disagree, and you can
Yeah.
go after someone else's philosophy or their ideas. But has it ever gotten to the point where they were able to cancel someone out completely from a scene or something
Nah,
like that? I don't think so, right? Never,
no,
you never get to something like that,
nah.
right?
They might never have a career again, but they wouldn't like disappear unless they like,
But I think that's a great part about it because like restoration, rehabilitation. That's what God is all about. And as Christians, that's what we should also be all about. Not destroying and tearing down. And then what? So it's like you're taking this person, you're ripping them up in pieces, and you're throwing them in the trash can instead of carefully taking them away from their position and then giving them an opportunity to become better, and then maybe depending on the severity of what they've done, return them and restore them. And I believe that that's what we should do as Christians, and that we forget, and we get warped and we get sucked into this social justice warrior mode where it becomes this more holier than thou. And as Christians, we know that's not true. I mean, we all have this part of us that is rebellious and a past that's crazy. But if you're a real Christian, then you can look at another Christian and see not the dark past, but the growth in contrast to the dark past. Like my brother knows the Iking of 10 years ago and the Iking now is totally different, or not totally different, but there are changes. And if you're a true Christian, then you would appreciate the change instead of looking at the blemish, if that makes any sense. But that's how I see it. That yes, that person was that, but look at him now, something like that.
yeah, beautiful. This reminds me of a post. I mean, a meme that I made and I posted on our Worship in Waves Facebook page. Uh, I think yesterday or the other day. I'm a good person. God is love. Level 2, God is just. No one is righteous, not one. I am guilty of sin. Level 3, by God's grace, He sent His Son for our salvation. And level 4, Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. And that's the highest level of
And I
understanding.
think that's really great because then we see people not because of what they've done, but because of who God is in their lives. And I think that's the song we used to sing, Jesus at the center of it all.
This, that song again.
Wait, you used to sing? You
Used to
used to
sing.
sing? What
Used to
happened?
sing.
I love that song.
Did
That's like
did
one
we
of my
cancel that?
favorite.
We
I think
as a
we
church
canceled
we
that.
canceled that
I
song.
remember. I remember listening it for the first time. You guys played that song the first time, and I was like, it's not me. I'm not feeling it. And then I went back and then I listened to the song live, like on YouTube. I listened to the version. I was like, wow, this is a great song. I was thinking maybe they didn't execute like I it's still new. And then when you guys started playing that song, and singing that song every Sunday. I just, this is my jam. That was my favorite song, and
It's been
I got
cancelled.
Cancel.
canceled. I got
Cancel.
canceled. I was like, oh no,
Oh no.
God, I love